Hi, everyone. We have a lot to talk about this month. There is a huge amount of cosmic frequency coming towards us, and I'm going to tell you about that in detail coming in the next few months. And we're also going to talk about the emergence of the higher dimensional self. And that's also coming in the next few months. I'm going to give you all the details on that and what you might experience as that's happening. I would also like to get into this concept of the earth splitting and how we might experience that, but also the timelines and the idea of the bifurcation of timelines to lower and higher, and just unpack that concept a little bit. Lots going on. It is jam-packed over these next few months. So it's going to be kind of a hold on to your hats period, I think. I'm Paige, Energy Healer and Channel, and this is your September energy update. Please do take a moment to like and subscribe, and I greatly appreciate that. It really helps me to get primarily this frequency out to people. The messages are wonderful and they're important, but getting that frequency out is really the most important thing right now because it helps people individually shift their frequency, which helps all of us as a collective. So on that topic, I generally start with the Metatron frequencies, and I don't have any of those because I haven't held that meditation yet. It's actually coming this coming Saturday, which is September 27th. It's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern time on the Insight Timer, and that is free. Everyone can join. All you need to do is go to the Insight Timer, and I will put a link below for that. What we do in those is we receive a lot of frequency. We're joined by Metatron and 7 archangels, plus around 200 other beings. It's generally angels and galactics who are there to help bring those frequencies in and help you integrate them and bring them into the field of humanity, that you then become an anchor for those frequencies within the field of humanity. The frequencies are specific every time. There are always 3. I will outline those in the talk before we get into the meditation and tell you what they're about. Always channel those the day of. And you can look back at any of the recordings here and see what they've been in the past and get a sense of what I'm talking about. Anyway, it's always interesting. It's always specific to the moment. So we'll see what's coming up for right now. It's always fascinating to find out what that's going to be. So I look forward to joining you there. And do remember that when you use those, you are shifting your individual frequency. So that's one way of pushing yourself higher. I talk about that a lot here in my updates and in everything that I do, because right now it is all about the push higher. So we're going to talk more about that right now. I have a lot of information for you. I have a lot of information from galactics specifically. So I'm going to be actually hopping over to a document and checking some of that. So let's see where we want to start. I think we're going to begin with the emergence of the higher dimensional self. And I should say, I know I changed the time on this. It's different from what was on the thumbnail, and I apologize for that. It was a last-minute confusion. But if you are here and you have questions, you can put those in the chat. I'll answer them as I go, or just wait till the end. And if you have questions after the fact, please do post those. So let's talk about this higher dimensional self emerging. What does that mean, first of all? We are shifting. Our light bodies have been shifting for quite a long time. And we seem to have reached the culmination of that moment. There's a lot going on with all kinds of shifts, and it's pushing us higher collectively. And we've hit a point where we are actually going to be emerging in a higher dimensional form. This is going to happen. This is from Galactics, who brought this information in the other day. I was doing a channeling in my community. I said, don't remember who it was. I talked to so many different galactics, but what they said was this would affect about 80% of the population. So about 80% of people are going to go through this. It does have to do with an ability to reach higher frequency states. So it's going to be, people who've done some work or who just, are already at that place. What they showed we might experience as this is happening is they showed us as in sort of like we're each sort of in our own little miniature process of swirling energy around us. And what they said is that it's as if the things around you, life, your customary habits, your understanding of your world, your way of carrying yourself is going to have to shift. You're shedding your old skin. So that the old skin was very aligned and resonant with what's around you, what's in your life, the way you've constructed your life, different things like that, all of that is going to be spinning and sort of dissolving to some degree. Not to be afraid, you're ready for this. You're just going to be taking a step up. But what they said was not to try to cling to anything from the past as you are in this moment of transformation. You want to focus on moving upward. Think about the emergence and trust. They said trust in the process because we are ready. We have done a lot of work, right? We are all ready. So it's very exciting to think about this. And they said that this will start for most people in November and it will progress through February. So they've given us a time frame, meaning that by February, these processes should be complete and everyone will be going through it at some point during that process. I don't know if it's going to take the entire time or if it's just a 1-month process. I suspect it's a shorter process and we'll all just be going through it at different times during that window. Okay, so I'm going to move on. That's the first thing. So that's the first big news. Now the next big news is that we've got a huge wave of frequency coming. This was, it's coming from light years away from another multiverse. And this is information that's coming from the Galactic Center beings. I've talked about them quite a bit. They are the ones who designed the human reformulation process that I've also talked about quite a bit. You can look at some of the other videos or click the link in the description below to find out more about that. It's an accelerated evolutionary process. These are the beings, they say that they are from the center of our multiverse, very, very highly evolved group. So they're saying that in October, we're going to experience a wave of energy that is traveling our direction, and we just happen to be in the path of it. So it's a wave of cosmic frequency. They said it's not known how this is going to affect us. What is anticipated by them, let's say, is that some of the frequencies in our environment that we are very accustomed to will be canceled out by the frequency coming in. So this is really an important point, and I just want to break this one down a bit. So if you imagine that you are actually surrounded by frequency, we're kind of in a frequency soup. We are all our own combination of frequencies, very unique as your thumbprint. And we sort of anchor into the frequencies around us. It's our comfort zone. It's what we're used to, right? It's what creates the reality we experience as our environment. So it's possible that some of these frequencies around us might just disappear overnight. That could be very disorienting. And what they've said is if, for example, if you anchor into some of those frequencies that disappear, and those frequencies are associated with your well-being, you're feeling like you're able to get into a nice state, feeling calm and relaxed, that could be affected. And you might feel like you're a little off and you just can't get to where you feel normal. That's something to be aware of. It's possible that that could happen. And they're not sure how intense or how intensely this is going to affect us. It could be something that we experience as a blip. It could be something that's actually quite impactful. They said it hasn't ever happened before. It's the first time. So there's really no way of predicting. We'll just have to see how we do with it. But just be aware of that's coming. And here's the flip side of it that's actually really beneficial. And this is something that they have been talking a little bit more about, is that it gives us the opportunity for a huge quantum leap forward. So if you're someone who has been working on shifting your own frequency, moving to higher states, this is going to be like, you'll be unmoored. The anchors are going to disappear and you'll move very quickly into those higher states you've been pushing towards. Because if you think about it, as we're shifting to higher states, we are kind of pulling against something. We're pulling against where we've been. There is a little bit of tension there. We don't just move like that for that reason. There is so much around us that anchors us to where we've been. So this shift could open a big window for us. And they've said it should start to come in October. They have said that there will be another wave in February. So just something to keep in mind. They did say, when they did the last enrollment, when we did the last enrollment for this process, the reformulation process, it was so that we could start the transmissions now in September in advance of this energy coming in October. So the next round, the next enrollment will be in November. If you're interested, just keep that on your radar. It's coming, and you'll be in the transmissions in time to take advantage of what's already happening in that second wave in February. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the information that's come in from the Galactic Center again, and it's for this month. And I'm going to have to hop over to a document, and I'm just going to go through it point by point and pause and talk it through a little bit and unpack it because it's a lot to get through. So the first thing they've said is that a brilliant ball of light is coming our way. It's coming from within our multiverse. It wasn't sent to us intentionally. It was actually an experiment generated by galactic beings elsewhere, also very highly evolved group, about 20 times more evolved than we are. And it's formed of subatomic particles that have been infused with exponentially higher frequencies of light than what most of this universe is accustomed to. So no specific direction was set, but it was determined that it would move on a path aligned to what they called the growth patterns of the multiverse. Now, this is a new concept for me, so I can't really go into detail on that, but apparently there are growth patterns for the multiverse. And that apparently is a specialty of the group that designed this light, is working with those growth patterns. So how does this, my question then to the guides was, how does this relate to the Earth? And they said, we sit on a network of within a network of star systems that are developing together. And that our science is aware of these systems. It's within our galaxy. And that the galaxy sits upon a frequency pathway that it extracts from as it continues to evolve. So extracts from meaning we pull from. So it would be frequency that's cosmic frequencies that are part of this growth process. So modifying, not static, right? Always moving to the next higher phase, and that we pull from that. The ball of light will pass through the galaxy, moving quite close to our planet. We may not detect its presence, but it will be felt in our experience. It will elevate existing frequency networks with higher light. So when we talk about frequency networks, there are a lot of different frequency networks that exist already. I've talked about that a bit, especially with these much higher galactic frequencies. They tend to anchor in nodes and create networks around the globe. And there are multiple different networks and there are multiple grids that are holding higher frequency energies. And that's one way that we move to a higher state, and one way that the Earth is moving in its frequency shift. Okay, so this is something that's going to primarily affect people who are already able to reach higher states. So if you've been listening to channeled frequency, if you, for example, and it could be anyone's, I'm not saying it has to be mine, but any channeled frequency will help you move to higher states. If you've been attending the Metatron channelings or listening to those recordings after the fact, you are probably going to feel this in some way. I asked some questions about this ball of light because there are so many different things happening right now that people are talking about. There are people talking about a flash of light that's coming. There is the 3-eye atlas that's coming, this object. And what they said it's not related to either of those. So then I asked how it's going to affect the planet's shift. And it's not going to affect the emergence of the higher dimensional self. Let me say that. And it's not known exactly how it's going to affect everything. Really, this is all new. This is an experiment that also hasn't happened before. So with these things, they'll say it's just not known. It's not known. They're not going to make a prediction. I also prefer not to make predictions. We just want to wait and see what happens. So they've said it's not known. But it brings up the question of the planet's shift and all of these different influences that are happening right now. And what they've said about this is it takes us into this. This gets me into the conversation about timelines. And I've talked about that extensively. I have a blog on my website. If you're interested in learning more about timelines, we have individual timelines. We have a collective timeline that's just for humanity. And we also have a planetary timeline. There are 6 individual timelines within humanity right now, and that all of the shift in those timelines happened between February and March of this year. I talked about that extensively in the updates in the past. So I won't go back into that. Right now, though, the big picture and the most important thing really at this time is that the Earth is still shifting. The Earth began its frequency shift back in May when Saturn moved into Aries. And they have said that the Earth will continue in its frequency shift until Saturn moves off of the 3rd degree of Aries. They've said that the 3rd degree of Aries is the most important one, and in how Saturn interacts with it in this big picture. So we still have some time. That's March of 2026. Now, while we're going through this process, we are still shifting as a collective. So in August, from the 8th to the 12th, we had a collective shift in consciousness. And I've talked about that already. Talked about that last month. That was big news. We could have more shifts. The way that we work is, the way that this process is working is we shift, the planet shifts, we shift, the planet shifts. We work in tandem. We're going back and forth, and that's been going on for a long time. Once the planet completes its shift in frequency, humanity is going to settle wherever that is. So when we talk about different timelines and this theory of the Earth splitting, I was asking them to explain that a little bit for me. And what they said is, first of all, nothing is predestined. We could still not split. That's a possibility, right? And the reason we might split is because we are separating out in frequency, so that those 3 higher timelines within humanity are separating enough from the 3 lower timelines that we just pull apart into 2 separate fields ultimately. But again, it doesn't have to happen that way. So there's still potential for us to move together, which would be preferable. The more we move apart, the more dissonance we have. The harder it is to find common ground, the harder it is to see eye to eye, etc. What they've said is there is one lower timeline that's pretty well defined, but there are multiple options for a higher timeline if we were to split in that way. So it isn't determined yet what that higher timeline would be, and that really is determined by us. So we talk about all the time, it's about our reaching higher, our shifting our own frequency, sharing with others, coherence through the heart. That's been a big topic lately that they've talked about quite a bit. I believe Metatron talked about in the last channeling was finding heart coherence with others. The more we pull apart, the more important it is to find that coherence. So if we were to remain on one timeline together, then the longer term outcomes could potentially be much better for us as a species. That's just something to keep in mind. So there's a lot to think about and unpack still with what would happen if we did split. What would that actually look like? What would it feel like? Trying to land that plane, which is that's a challenging one. I'm going to ask those questions, but I don't even want to start yet because right now we could still change that and stay on one timeline together with the Earth. So here is what we can do to make that happen. Here is the most important thing for right now for making that happen. We need to create our higher vision for the planet, each one of us, and walk with that higher vision. You want to think about it at least once a day. Call it to mind. I'm going to remind you that back in October of last year, they said we had a window of time to make our own shifts to higher states. They said we've been working for the last few years. We'd hit a point where we had 5 months, and that at the end of that 5 months, that window would close. At the time, they didn't tell me what the closure of that window was about, and I didn't know what it was about. I shared all that information, and then sure enough, we got to February and March, and all of a sudden it was this great timeline convergence of the individual lines that were on, shifting of those lines, and then people moving on to new lines and solidifying on a new line. So it's important to take note when they say that now is the time to act. And they said that last month. Now is the time to act. Now is the time to work towards a higher state for the whole planet, for the whole of humanity. Now is the time. And that window will close when the planet is finished with its shift. Again, I want to repeat that timelines are pathways of frequency. They open up potential for the future. So you aren't placed on a timeline because someone is sitting in judgment and saying, you go over here, you go over there. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with what you have done for yourself. So that's how we ended up on the timelines that we're on now. When the individual shifts happened back in February and March, it was all through resonance. You are pulled through resonance onto a timeline. And again, I go into that in the blog. So it's just important to remember that. Remember that there are higher forces at play in all of these things, but we are the creators. So we are the ones who create through our projection. So they've given us an exercise to do. I'm just going to walk through it with you right now. And what they've said is to create the vision of the most beautiful, pristine environment that you can possibly imagine, sort of something out of a dreamscape. The water is crystal clear and sparkles. It feels very alive. The air is fresh and enlivens your senses. You hear the sounds of nature in high definition, and you see colors vividly, and objects appear multidimensional. That's what's possible. This is really possible, but we have to create it through our vision. And they call this, they talk about this as coming into coherence, and they say to do it through your heart. The heart is a powerful, powerful, powerful source of creation. It's where the soul expresses. It's where you find your truth. The more you can drop into your heart with all of your visions, with all of your interactions, with any time that you're evaluating a situation, the better the outcome will be, and you'll be creating from a higher expression. Really, really important. So you can do this anytime you want, just creating your vision and then taking a moment to breathe into it. We breathe life into it when we bring our breath in. You breathe life into your vision. You project it outwardly. That is part of how we create every single day. So wherever you're putting your thoughts is where you're putting your energy, is where you're putting your projections, is where you're manifesting, right? So you want to think about putting your thoughts into a higher place, putting that vision into a higher place. And so with every step you take, you can think about being in alignment, in coherence with this higher vision for the planet and humanity, all coming together. If you start to breathe that in and just think about feeling into it, sensing it with all of your senses, and hold that a little bit every day, the change we could make is tremendous. So that is, that's what I've got for you this month. It's a lot of information. There's a lot going on. There are a lot of different streams of energy coming in. I know a lot of people are feeling that in big ways, feeling tired, feeling a little confused and disoriented. And they have said in particular that this emergence of the higher dimensional self might feel a little disorienting, might feel a little bumpy. as far as the ride goes in that emergence. So we want to keep all of these things in mind. So let's see, hey, you guys. And do we know when the light is coming? Yeah, that's a great question, Caress. Hey, Judy. The light, and I assume that well, we've got two different forms of light, really. We've got the ball of light, and they said that the ball of light would be coming, I want to say it was November. Let me just check back and see if it said, in case I didn't miss it here. And they did say that roughly 40% of the global population would experience the energy of that ball of light, meaning people who are already at a higher state are the ones who are going to experience it the most. We're going to pick up on it because they're able to sense into it. Let me just check, because I'm not sure. I don't think I have it in my notes. So let's see what they say if I ask right now. Likely to come in November. Let me see if they have a beginning, middle, end of the month. Mid-November is what they're saying. Okay, you guys. Well, I want to thank you for coming, and I apologize for the change in time. I think I've confused everyone. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to check in with the guides about them. If you want to put a question below, you can do that after the fact. And I will hope to see you there on Saturday on the Insight Timer for that Metatron channeling, so we can all take in some more good energy and keep pushing this shift along. Hey, Christine, you're welcome. Hey, Rhonda. How do we keep our light high when so many others are down right now? You know, I think that is such a great question, Rhonda. I mean, it really speaks to how we are all in such different places. And they have, and I'll talk about how to keep the light high, but they've also said, you know, we have to make sure we build bridges. We have to make sure that we keep the connection strong with others. We have to build heart coherence with others and try heart coherence even when we have a hard time finding the commonality. So they've said over and over to look for the common ground and to help, and that helps pull others along. So that's a big one. And that's part of the answer to this. Hey, Pat and Anne. But the let's talk about how to keep your frequency higher. Really, that comes down to, you know, first of all, don't watch the news. You can avoid it. I know that's tricky, but you have to be able to step outside of what's happening around you and come into alignment with a higher energy, your own. I like to go into meditation, go into my own inner alignment, go into your breath, go into your heart, and you can ask to be connected to higher guidance. You know, you all have guides. Everyone has spirit guides who help them all the time. You can ask to connect to galactics who can help you with something. You can ask to connect with angels. That's an excellent way to bring higher frequency in. And if you come into your core, and what I like to do in my meditations with my group and my angelic attunements that I do, we bring ourselves back to our center. You want to come back to your core, come into your alignment, because we tend to extend ourselves out in a lot of different directions energetically. You know, as we go about our day, we're doing this and we're doing that, and we're working with different people in different situations, and we can get a little spread out, spread thin, and a little scattered. So if you set that intention to bring yourself back to your core and come into your own alignment, think about your heart and ask to be taken into a higher state. That's, I think, one of the best ways to do that. Hey, Peggy. Let's see. The ball of light is different from the frequency. It is different. Yeah, I know. It's confusing because there is so much going on right now. That's why I was saying it is jam-packed. But yes, it is different and very unique. You know, this ball of light is very unique. Anytime the frequency coming in October. Well, Again, they don't have specific, days for it to arrive. They just said, let me see if they'll say beginning, middle, or end for that. Closer to the end of October is what they're saying now for that wave of cosmic frequency. So that's, again, the wave is what's coming from light years away, another multiverse, and this ball of light is from our multiverse, from a group that created it, and it's following the growth patterns within the multiverse. Any other questions before we conclude? Okay, would it be safe to travel then? You know, I'm not going to make any predictions about it, and they aren't making any predictions about it because they're saying it's not known how this will affect us. So they've said we may not notice it, or we may feel it more intensely. What they did say about that wave that I'll add is that it would be strongest or most strongly felt in the southern hemisphere, and they specifically said the southern half of South America, in Australia and New Zealand. So the energy is apparently going to concentrate more over those areas. It is possible it could disrupt communication systems. That's always a possibility when we have a big influx of some sort of cosmic energy. And it's also possible that we won't feel it. It's possible that it could happen in some areas and not in others. They did say that it would affect the entire globe because it would envelop the planet, but it must be coming from that direction, the southern hemisphere. Just it looks like right over Antarctica, and that might be where the sort of the impact point is. And Cress, is there anything coming through this week? So this week, what week is it? This is the end of September. Well, of course, right now we are on the eclipse, right? The second eclipse and the equinox. So we have those huge moments, and I know, Caress, that's something that that you follow. So if there's anything coming this week, not that I'm aware of, specifically in terms of energies coming onto the planet or a big shift that's about to happen. But I also wasn't aware of the collective consciousness shift before it happened. And then it happened, and they said, this is what's happening right now. There's just so much to keep up with. So we'll see, but I think we have enough on our hands with the eclipses and the equinox, right? Hopefully we'll have a little bit of downtime between some of these to adjust. But I think that for me, the message is it's going to be a thrill a minute. It might be a wild ride. Like I said, you may have to hold on to our hats for the next few months as we go through all of this. And just remember, trust in the process, trust that you're ready, trust that you'll get through it, that you'll emerge to a higher place, build bridges, keep communication going, find the commonality, work on coherence, vision for the planet. Those are the big things. Yeah, so much. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you for joining me. And again, apologies for that change in time. I do appreciate your showing up, and I will see you next month. Have a wonderful month. Hey, Esther. You are welcome. Hey, Shirley. Okay, everyone. Bye-bye.